Yes, hello. Good afternoon. What? I want the supplies tomorrow morning. I'm not prepared to receive them day after tomorrow. I will not accept them the day after tomorrow. You have a commitment to our factory, and I have a commitment to our production department. I cannot allow our men and machinery to remain idle even for one day. We shall have to review our business relationship. I want the goods to be delivered tomorrow morning. The supply must come at 10 o'clock in the morning. That's that. Good day. Well, it's part of the game. I'm sorry for the outburst. Happens every day. Any manufactured product requires a wide variety of materials, both for itself and for organizational activities. This is brought from numerous sources at the right times, in the right quantities, and they must be of the right quality. Once inside the factory, the materials move through a complex system to ensure that any specified item will be readily available when required, where required, and in the quantity required. In organizations involved in mass production, the materials flow in a certain sequence, and the sequence is repetitive. Because mass production in itself is a repetitive process. The beginning of the sequence in material flow is arrival at the factory. It must be checked to see whether it conforms to what was ordered. The accepted lot is now the factory's responsibility and sent into the stores and put in its allotted places. When required, it is issued, perhaps for production, perhaps for maintenance, or for some other use. All these functions are the responsibilities of the Materials Management Department. And this department is also responsible for purchasing, disposal of scrap and surplus material, and partly or fully inventory control. In most modern organizations, the Materials Management Department has evolved from the conventional store purchase department. Therefore, the term Materials Management refers, on the one hand, to the limited task of the department, and on the other hand, it refers to the system as a whole. As a system, Materials Management tells us how each separate department manages materials in a different way in order to harmonize the differing departmental goals. For instance, the marketing department wants to have the maximum variety always in stock. The production department has a different objective: to keep its men and machinery fully occupied. So it likes to have ample stock of the best quality material always on hand. The finance department dislikes the high-level inventory, and it always favors the lowest tender. The productivity of an organization depends on balancing these differing objectives. So at the corporate level, materials management stands for an integrated approach, which regards the organization as a whole. Materials management in this context stands for a systems approach, integrating the design development, processing, marketing, distribution, acquisition, use, flow, handling, storage, issue, maintenance, inspection and financing of materials in order to achieve corporate goals. An organization loses money if its men and machine are rendered idle because of the stock out of the required material. The stocks must be maintained of most of such materials. But then the inventories tie up money. There are other costs like handling and storage. This certainly calls for materials planning and programming.
See, the number of items required to produce any product, they are divided into three categories: A class item, B class item and C class categories. Now A class items are those items which are constitute about only 75% of the value of the product, and they constitute only 10% of the number of items required. The B class categories are the items which are 20% of the value of the product and approximately 20% the number of items required. and the remaining 90% or 75% of the items only constitute 10% of value. That is C-class categories. So these only main monitoring is required to be done on A and B class categories of items. For the imported items, we, depending on the lead time and depending on the government policies, normally the inventories are stocked from 3 to 6 months.
You see, the trick in inventory control is to juggle various factors to work out a stock situation that would ensure the minimum overall cost by blocking the least amount of corporate funds. Now, the administrative costs would be prohibitive if a purchase were to be made each time an item is issued. So inventory level must not exceed some upper limit and should not fall below some lower limit. This can be objectively determined and maintained by the system of inventory control. Now here lies the answer to questions raised by the various departments. What should be the maximum permissible stock? The finance manager wants to know. What should be the minimum stock? That is the user's concern. When should action be taken to replenish? Here, both the storekeeper and the purchase officer are involved. The storekeeper must know when to inform the purchase department to replenish, and the purchase department must know how far ahead to place the order. The elementary sawtooth model of inventory control shows the relationship between these elements. Adequate stock must be kept where immediate supply is not feasible, keeping in view the cost of placing the order and the cost of carrying inventory. This quantity is known as economic order quantity, EOQ. With consumption over a period of time, this quantity gets finished. So, in a good order system, the new stock arrives just in time. But the cycle can only go on if the action of reordering is taken in time. Reordering is done on the basis of the lead time period, the time taken to place the order and the outcome. Sometimes the rate of consumption may unexpectedly increase, thus resulting in a stock-out situation before the scheduled arrival. On the other hand, the lead time may also get extended, mainly due to a problem at the supplier's end, again resulting in a stock-out situation. To cope with such eventualities, a safety stock must be kept to provide protection against such contingencies. It is possible to measure this statistically because the parameters are well defined. Inventory management changes the parameters which inventory control can only juggle with. For example, safety stock can be reduced considerably by changing over to the slightly more expensive but the more reliable supplier. The techniques of inventory management include rationalized codification, variety rationalization, ABC systems of controls, and value engineering. Most of these techniques require collaboration of departments other than materials management department. Now, inventories are nothing but purchases made ahead of time when they're likely to be required. The criteria for making purchases are to buy the right quantity of the right quality at the right price at the right time and from the right source. Note the mismatch between the responsibilities of the materials management department and its authority. For example, the quality is specified by the user and not by the materials management department. The purchase discipline is very highly developed in India, partly because many organizations treat purchasing as a profit center and not as a cost center. Now, the flow of information and decision between purchase, inventory, store, user, and supplier follow a documented procedure. And the paperwork that initiates its circle of activity begins with the receipt of some demand for material. This demand usually goes to the store. The store makes an issue, notes it down in writing. If it follows the ABC system for issues, then there will be no paperwork for C items. For items that are regularly stocked and used, stores will inform purchase when the reorder level has been reached. If the store does not stock what has been indented for, then the purchase department must be informed as early as possible. Purchase department gets in touch with suppliers and ensures procurement and delivery on schedule. the supply arrives. The inspector will decide whether to accept or reject the supply. The materials which need to be stored for a longer duration will be taken to the store and the details recorded. The purchase department will be intimated that the order has been fulfilled. The accounts department will also be informed they have to make the payments. This is just a glimpse of the kind of paperwork that goes into the materials management department. The actual paperwork is much more, both in variety and in quantity. You now have a broad idea of what materials management means, especially as a departmental function. Let me end by listing for you what materials management has repeatedly achieved in India. Well over half of the recurring expenditure of most organizations, even of hospitals, goes on purchases. A 10% saving is feasible, and this is equal to the profits if one could increase one's sales by 70% or more. A seller's market is the norm in India, yet capacity underutilization is very high. Much of this underutilization is due to the stoppages of work caused by frequent stockouts of something or the other, despite very high overall stocks. Therefore, capacity utilization can be increased quite considerably by supply-side management. Inventories in the form of materials that have been paid for but not yet issued for use reduce profitability. The stronger the purchase system in a seller's market, the less the security that an organization needs in the form of ample stocks, that is, hoards. Productivity of man and machines is dependent on having enough material of the right quality when needed. In fact, the productivity of material is about 5 times as important in India as the productivity of labor. Work-related stress has been called the 20th century disease. Problems caused by poor materials management are a major cause. Better materials management reduces unpleasant surprises. Time is an extremely scarce and very valuable resource. Materials management system creates 30 to 90% extra time, effective time, during the working period. Now you understand why materials management is called the last frontier of management, and why companies that have introduced it wonder why they did not do so earlier.